Direct from Foxborough, Massachusetts, the gem of Norfolk County, and taped at the studios of Foxborough Cable Access. It's Foxborough Central, and here's your host, Bob Hickey.
Hi there, we are here for another great episode of Foxborough Central. I'm Bob Hickey, your host. So good of you to join us as we once again meet another candidate for the Board of Selectmen. John Gray, I want to welcome you to the program of Foxborough Central, and thank you for taking a little bit of time to come sit with us and share why, many of us want to know why, you want to run for the Board of Selectmen.
Well, thanks for having me, Bob. I appreciate it, and it's an early spring morning. It's actually nice outside, but it is early.
Well, it is early now, but folks at home, I'm sure you're enjoying your coffee or maybe a nighttime snack, whatever you're doing. Please take a little bit of time. We're going to spend a half hour with John and learn about his involvement with Foxborough to this point and what he wants to accomplish for the next 3 years. As you know, he is one of three candidates running for the two open seats, two seats on the Board of Selectmen. So it's vote for two this year.
Correct.
And with your running, you're currently on the advisory committee?
Currently, I'm on the advisory committee. This is my second tour of duty, and it's kind of interesting. It's when I decided to enter the race, it actually changed the whole dynamic, and it's actually healthy. It makes it an actual race rather than just two incumbents being reelected.
Well, as far as a voter goes, it gives certainly choices better, and also it shows that there's a healthy level of volunteerism in the town, because the Board of Selectmen is not a paying gig, and nor is the advisory committee.
Absolutely, it's a lot of time.
It's a lot of work. It's not just the 1 hour a week that they advertise.
There's a lot of research, and I think we do a good job of as far as bringing a balanced opinion and direction to the town at town meeting. And strangely enough, and I think it's a wonderful thing, is that the town actually listens to the advisory committee and follows its lead. So it's a really important committee in town, and I think it always has been.
And we'll get to selectmen things in a second. I wanted to give you props. Last year during the election coverage, we tried something new, and we had you as my guest, and we talked at length about the upcoming warrant.
That really worked out well.
I'm glad you think that, because I really enjoyed that, and I thought the town benefited from having an extended conversation about the town warrant. I mean, you read it in the newspaper and you get the 2-second blurb, and unfortunately when you go through the warrant at town meeting, by the time you get to the 15th, 16th item, it's yeah. But I really enjoyed that, so I want to thank you, and we're going to continue that this year. You've set the wheels in motion, and Larry Thomas and I are going to be sitting down on election night.
I think we've started a new tradition.
I believe so.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that, and folks at home, please be sure to tune in to Cable 22, I believe it is, and on Verizon it would be 38, for election coverage on April 30th. Tuesday, April 30th.
Correct.
Come out, vote.
Absolutely.
So why should your supporters vote for you? And people who may not be supporters yet, who are going to become supporters, why should they vote for you?
Well, it's interesting. When folks ask me why I'm running for the Board of Selectmen, it really comes down to a number of things. One is I'm probably not alone in thinking in the future and wondering what our town is going to look like 5, 10, 20 years from now. And every decision that's made on the Board of Selectmen has a cumulative effect as to how the town will be shaped. And the decisions that are made, they need to be made with a vision of the town in mind, rather than just whatever's happening today. So part of the reason I'm running is I have a lot of experience on the advisory committee. I chaired it twice. I know the inner workings of the town. I know the mechanics of town government. I know the budget. I know the state laws and state mandates. And then to couple that with my business background, and I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a numbers guy, and I can actually begin to put the pieces together to drive value, transparent value to the taxpayer, so they can say, hey, this is what I'm paying for and this is what I'm getting. And this is the way the building blocks of the future are being put into place, so I can actually see what my town is going to look like 10, 20 years from now. That's why I'm running for selectman.
Interesting, and it is an exciting thing, because as you know from volunteering in town for as long as you have, you can see decisions that you make and support and have maybe a hand in the creation or the delivery of, and you can kind of sit back and say, yeah, I was part of that. That's pretty sharp. And so let's talk about accomplishments. You've been involved. This is certainly not your first foray into town politics. It's a great opportunity for the voters, because we have three experienced people running for the two seats. So it's not as if there's a a political novice or someone who really doesn't know what's going on? You definitely know what's going on.
Oh yeah. Well, the advisory committee is a great pathway into other elected positions in town. It gives you a sense for what could be achieved, what can't be achieved. There are limitations in the way town budgets work. But some of the achievements, are really in asking hard questions about the budget to say, guys, we're trying to get more out of less money, and there's an endless amount of demands, but there's not an endless amount of resources. So part of the achievements we've had is a good conversation with the town manager, the town finance director, in trying to get more out of a limited amount of resources, and that's been consistent over the 8 years that I've been on AdCom. And some folks will probably tell you, those who have been to AdCom and some who have seen me at town meeting, I do ask some pretty difficult questions. And those are the questions that I know that the taxpayer wants asked and wants answered. And I think that the advisory committee should be an active, get down into the details committee, and not be a rubber stamp and not just go along. We should be the watchdog for the community, and we have been in the last few years.
Interesting. And the advisory committee meets weekly during this type of season?
Yeah, the last 2 years we've been meeting every Wednesday night. And sometimes during budget season there are times when we have to meet more often than that. It used to be a little slower in the beginning of the season, but now with special town meetings in the fall, it's become essential to actually get together every Wednesday. But the research goes on the rest of the week.
Now, you're a hard-working committee, but each person, and I know that last year you were chairman, but each person takes a board or a topic that makes it their specialty. So really the AdCom, or a member of the AdCom, will research and then present back to the committee in full, and then from there you form opinions and direction.
Right, we have liaisons to the school department, liaisons to highway, water and sewer, liaisons to general government. We have liaisons to every subsection of the town. We also have folks who will take various parts of the budget and focus on those. And then when it comes to warrant articles, say we have 16 warrant articles, the budget being one or two of them, but some of the other ones, such as the stretch code, for instance, that will be assigned out to maybe 2 or 3 people who will do extensive research on that particular warrant article and bring it back to the advisory committee, give a full report, because you don't have time to do it all.
Right.
So that's how we divvy up the load.
So that's how it's organized.
Exactly right.
So in your time on the AdCom, who have you liaised with, or what have your enjoyable liaisons been with the different boards and pieces of?
Well, because my wife works for the school department, I can't handle schools. But I've always been involved in general government. And I spent a lot of time with Randy Scollins, Kevin Pecos, even going back as far as Andy Gala, and working the revenue side, the sources of revenue, where monies from the state, monies from other sources, and actually go through and try to balance a budget. And it's sometimes it goes a little bit easier than others. Other times when there's a lot of demand and there's other projects and there's debt exclusions, it becomes a challenge. But one of I'd say my accomplishments is working with a budget in the general government perspective.
So with that, in up years, things are great and everything is gravy. But the problem is that you mentioned demand. There's also pent-up demand. So in the years where it's not so plentiful, and we'll take the stretch from 2002 to 2005, and even going to 2006 cycle, where there was significant decrease in the revenue stream coming from state sources, and then we ended up with the housing issue, and then a decrease in property values, which don't necessarily mean that our budget decreases, but the burden gets shifted a bit. And then moving from a unified tax rate to a split tax rate, that they're working their way back. This all goes towards what is the non-state and non-federal revenue stream, which would be development and
actually,
business.
we've been fortunate. If you take a look at our neighboring towns, we've been lucky in the last few years that we've had a lot of new growth, and that has supplemented the dip or leveled it out. Other towns haven't been as fortunate. So, going through those periods, we were actually able to sort of level out the budget. And not that we weren't paying attention to the fact that revenue sources were declining and the property values were declining, but we were actually extremely fortunate that we had that.
And as a member of the Board of Selectmen, what would your role be as far as development and encouraging that revenue stream growth?
I look at Foxborough in the next few years, and I know that we want to maintain the culture that we have. We're unique. We have a fantastic community. You can walk down the street and meet 3 people. However, you really need to understand that the community needs jobs, it needs business, it needs commerce. And I'm a business guy. I'm an entrepreneur, and I see where jobs are made, and I know that they're appreciated. If you take a look at the Route 1 corridor, there's still a lot of opportunity up there. And I'd like a little bit more of a mixed development where, just imagine if there was a large software company up there. Just imagine the people that would attract and the other businesses that would attract. It's, a lot of retail is great, but retail isn't the engineering jobs, and those are really the foundation of a community. Those are the stabilizing influences on a community where you have good jobs. And that actually trickles down through the community and actually makes it stronger.
And I guess that brings us to the conversation of Inventus and the company and the issue currently on the table for the tax incremental financing. Right. Where do you stand on that?
Well, I can see both sides of that issue. It's interesting that at the end of the day, you really have to settle that issue on principle. The details of it, could they have been negotiated a little bit stronger? Perhaps. Could the town have had more time to digest it? Perhaps. But at the end of the day, Inventus is a company with high-paying jobs, and a lot of the folks in our community work there. They support their families there, and there's a trickle-down effect on it. So at the end of the day, I think the Selectmen made the right call, and I think that by incenting Inventus to stay in town, as a sort of a brick in the foundation of our community, I think that was the right move.
Excellent. So thank you for that. And one of the nice things about this program is that we're really talking about things that you feel strongly about, that you want to improve, change, enhance, or continue on. And so with that, as a member of a Board of Selectmen with 4 other members that are working with you, how do you see yourself working with them? And I suppose the flip side of the question, which is real what I'm going to get to, is what would stand you apart and make you an important member of that board and yet working with the others?
Well, there's 2 reasons. One is from a financial point of view. I'm very comfortable with the way the town budget is laid out, and I'm very comfortable understanding it. But I think from a secondary point of view, I would engage the business community. I look at the downtown, and although it has some improvements, it still has a long way to go. Just to try to attract folks to come to the town of Foxborough and make this home. I don't know if a lot of that's been done. Everyone's been focused on Patriot Place as being the epicenter of new growth, but there's a lot of opportunity elsewhere. And I think if it's done right, we can have a thriving business community that lives together with our residential areas, neither one getting in each other's way and both supporting each other. And I think that breathes new life into a community. And I think that's what that's how I'm going to set myself apart on the Board of Selectmen. It's
interesting because when you look at Patriot Place, I prefer to think that Route 140, going through the center of town, is the business driver, because if you look at the south end of 140, that is the industrial park and
right.
the new Meditech coming in.
Right.
And then you look at the center of town with the downtown area, but sort of stagnated because of our failure to deal with the sewering issue on a resolute basis. We're still sort of open-ended about that, so I'm going to get to that in a second.
Sure.
And then you continue your way up, and Chestnut Green, of course, was a new development in the mid-2000s, and that's sort of maybe come to maximize their footprint as far as the commercial development, and they're still working on the housing end of it. And then you work your way the rest of the way up 140 and you come to Patriot Place. So I sort of view 140 as being the economic driver of the town, and Patriot Place being maybe the crown jewel on top. Mm-hmm. But then you work your way back down, and that's where a lot of the meat and potatoes happen.
Absolutely. And you mentioned sewer, and while sewer is not going to solve every problem with our commercial district, it will go a long way to saying, if I wanted to put a restaurant in the center of town, now I can have 50 people in my restaurant. If take the old fire station, if somebody wanted to do something with that, now we have the ability for folks to come in without sewer being the roadblock. But you look at sewer, it's an expensive project, but look, even the Romans had sewerage, and I think it's something that the residential areas, septic works just fine in this part of the country. But as far as residential and the ability to attract folks that can have a regional reach to come into Foxborough, sewerage becomes important. It's expensive, it's a long process, it's disrupting, but it's essential to grow.
Interesting about the Romans, not only do they have it, but you can still see their work because it was long-lasting and done right. So,
exactly right, yeah.
That's what we're trying to do here in Foxborough.
If we can get the sewerage system in the last 2,000 years, that'd be great.
I think we're just looking for the next 20. But right now, you say that sewerage is not an economic driver. You're absolutely correct. But right now in Foxborough, it's a handcuff.
It's a handcuff, right?
And for those who want to know where we're going with it and what the selectman's role is, what do you view the selectman's role in the overall sewering program or a solution?
Well, the selectmen need to be a proponent for it, and the thing is, this cumulative effect of decisions. When the selectmen say, that's is it a high priority or a low priority, and it's hard to really, say, boy, one of our highest priorities is sewerage. It's really not the sexiest topic going, but believe it or not, what's underground affects what's going to go above the ground. And the selectmen really need to say, we understand the value that sewage brings to town. We understand the role it'll play. And we begin now, but we probably won't see the effects of it for about 10 years.
And that's so true because you have to plan today for tomorrow's successes. So that's a great message to send out. The other, I guess, many of the other issues that are on the table will be addressed elsewhere. But the one that not necessarily burns in my mind, but where do you see the town hall project going?
I went over to the post office the day they had that tour, and it's a nice building. But ultimately, I sat back and actually reflected on this. If you go through a lot of New England towns, one of the showplace building that they have is generally their town hall, and I think we have a good-looking town hall, and I would like it to maintain the New England look that it has. I really don't think it should move from that location. I've taken a look at a few other architectural renderings of what might go there. But the trouble with Town Hall is it really doesn't have an advocate. And there's advocates for the schools and advocates for the fields and,
Sure.
and so on. But there's no one saying, hey,
you have a core group of people that use a facility, use a service,
right, yeah.
or are stakeholders, if you will, to use a current term. But we're all stakeholders at Town Hall, and maybe we take it too much for granted.
I think we do. And the thing is, if I was on the Board of Selectmen, I would take that as a priority. It's it's dated, it's old, it's worn. As somebody from out of town was to walk into Town Hall, it doesn't show well. It can be a lot better, and I know that Dick Haydecker and Bill Hughes have approaches to how to solve the problem. And it's a matter of money. It's a matter of will, but I think that we've put a lot of money into our public buildings over the last few years, and I think we can do a much better job in actually starting and grabbing hold of this town hall project. I'd like it to stay there, and I'd like it to look pretty much the way it looks now.
Mm-hmm. And so many of the businesses here in town really want it to stay in the center of town also because in addition to sewer, you have to have people and traffic and jobs. And what better driver than to have actual businesses here in the center of town? And that's the new urban model, if you will, where they have mixed-use development in the center of towns to bring people back in. Back in the 60s and 70s, the desire was to move people out to the suburbs, so that way you freed up space for all this great commercial, but then you took away the customers and you created malls, and then the commercial didn't happen because the users now had something more convenient to them as opposed to coming all the way back into town. So sort of it's the new urban planning of having mixed use and people living in town and working in town. And if we take Town Hall away, that would certainly go against that.
Well, I mean, imagine if Town Hall was, say, further down Route 140 in a leased office building. Mm-hmm. It would work and it would be functional, but it really wouldn't be the center. Right. The stake in the ground in the center of our commercial district. And really, I think that's where it needs to be.
That's very interesting because with that, you also need to look at what is the character of your town. And if you move everything out, then what is in the center of town? So good.
Well, we need to, what life we have in the center of town, we need to add to it, but we can't take away from it.
Right. So with that, and we're talking with John Gray, of course, who is a candidate for the Board of Selectmen. And John, as we get into this, if people want to get in touch with you and learn more about your campaign, you have a website?
I have a website. It's johngrayselectman.org.
www.johngrayselectman.org.
and yeah, it's up and running, and it's actually looking pretty good.
I've seen it. It's very, very respectable. I like it. You can learn good information. You have the tabs on there. Learn about me, my resume.
Absolutely.
So very good.
It gives a good background about me, my family. We've been in town now for 24 years. I think that's a fairly long time.
That's a long time.
I've actually been active in the town since almost day one. I was at a town meeting, and I remember Bill Euchner finding me in the audience and says, "Come on up." And within minutes, I was sworn into the advisory committee. And it was welcome to town. But it's a, we're glad we're here. I think if you've read the article in the Patch, it was Bill Euchner and I used to be on the finance committee in the town of Rentham. And he gave me about, I don't know, somewhere north of 10 to 20 reasons why Foxborough was such a good place to live. And I listened to that and I paid attention, and it came time for Kathy and I to move. Kids were coming fast and furious. And we said, we're moving to Foxborough. And we're glad we did. It's really a unique community. And you can actually say that, I've lived in other towns, originally from the city of Boston, but here there's a real community where I enjoy coming over to, get a haircut from Dave.
Yes.
And you run into, 6 or 7 other people. You can talk about the issues of the day, and that's what makes it fun.
People accuse me of getting all the information I ever needed to know from
Yeah, you
Dave.
have the same haircut as I do.
I do. It's
Yeah.
a good one.
So, but
Set it on number 2 and just have at it. Right?
Exactly. But that's really how we came to Foxborough and why we have really put down roots here.
Well, Foxborough is a great place, and I'm glad you have eloquently stated many of the reasons why I love being here with my family. And so the kids in the school system, they grew up through the schools, and they're now out
Yeah,
of the
3 of my
schools.
kids K through 12 and got I'd say a superior education. We had the option to send them to private school. We chose not to. I'm a product of public schools, and I think that they play an essential role in our community. My 3 kids, my son John went on to Bentley College. My daughter went on to Simmons, and she now works over at MIT. And my son Andrew is at Penn State right now. He's a junior.
Congratulations. That's
Yeah.
great. I love having these conversations because you get to learn about people more than you would in a 2-minute soundbite. So I hope folks at home are enjoying this as well. So I've just now learned that you knew Bill Euchner in a previous life when you were both in Rentham, and now he is our school committee finance director, school department finance director. And so that would seem to be an excellent opportunity to strengthen an already existing business and we'll say personal relationship. So that seems like it would be a positive.
Yeah, Bill's, Bill actually was the chairman of the advisory committee when I first joined. Then Frank Spillane was the chairman, and then I followed. But yeah, it's, Bill and I have sort of intertwined over the years. But it's still, from a business perspective, Bill's, there was a good company that Bill was involved in. Remember Rochelle's up in the center of town?
Absolutely.
It's that type of business that I'd like to be able to attract to Foxborough, which has a regional reach where it doesn't depend just on the 17,000 people in town, but it actually can pull folks in from other towns. But no, it's that's the reason I'm in Foxborough is Bill sort of talked me into it.
Well, we'll give him credit from the welcome wagon
Exactly
then next
right.
time we see him.
Exactly.
So with your run for selectman, and if you're elected, what are the first couple things you want to accomplish?
Well, the first thing I want to do is try to add stability to the Board of Selectmen. We've had some interesting years getting used to the Strong Town Manager Act, getting Kevin Pecos oriented and working with Kevin. And the thing is, we need a vision. We need a collective vision that we're working towards. Rather than just handling the issue of the day, we need to be able to say, okay, does this marry itself to where we want to go? And if the answer is yes, fine, we'll do it. But if the answer is questionable, saying, well, we want to go here, but this might take us in a different direction, let's sit back and contemplate and find out what the ramifications of that question are. So rather than just react to questions as they come, let's actually begin to get the Board of Selectmen together on a vision of what our town's going to look like 10, 20 years from now. And every decision that we make should be tempered against what that vision is.
It's interesting you say that because it's always the clarion calls that we need to be forward-looking. We need to have a 5, 10, 20-year plan. But then we have elections every year, and my 5-year plan may not be the same as your 5-year plan, may not be the same as the 5-year plan of whoever comes next year for one of the open seats next year. And so how do you, I love the word marry, I use it frequently myself, how do you marry that into the reality that decisions we make today, unless it's signed into law, is only as good as so long as I'm on a particular board or as you're on a particular board?
I think if you really had a pulse of the community, there is a vision. And you know, selectmen will come and go, there'll be new faces, but the thing is that vision needs to be said loudly and say, look, we need to you know, sign up for this vision. And then every subsequent selectman will be tested whether or not they're elected or not against that vision.
A measure, a town-wide philosophy, if you will. And I think we have a town-wide philosophy.
I think we do too. I think we do too.
We're fairly conservative. We've never done an override to meet operational.
We've never
budget.
done we've done debt exclusions for buildings, and I think that's wise.
Yep.
But as far as an operational override, no, they've been tried and they've failed, and I think the town understands that we do try to live within our means.
And with that, with your experience in business and with your financial acumen, as a member of the Board of Selectmen, where do you see yourself fitting in as far as coming on this board and bringing in your fresh ideas? Working with Randy Scollins, who's been our finance director since 2005, and he creates a 5-year plan and it's worked and vetted through the Board of Selectmen, but you probably have some ideas as to where that should be.
Yeah, it's Randy and I have worked extensively over the years. I have a lot of respect for him. And you know, as far as a 5-year plan, you know, Randy's got it laid out, provided that all the revenue sources and you know, and we can keep taxes level. But as far as my role on it, I'm a numbers guy. I'm an advocate for financial stability, and you know, rather than, and actually Randy does a great job of this. I think the Board of Selectmen, if they understand how he operates and follow his lead, they'll be fine. But the thing is, Randy's style is to level everything out. You know, there's no highs, there's no lows, there's no surprises. And if the Board of Selectmen sign up for that, and rather than try to push in expensive initiatives or say we need to go in a different direction, that approach actually works well for our town. It's you know, we're not in constant upheaval, and I think Randy plays a strong role in that.
Right, and he's a superior advocate for not using one-time revenue to fund recurring expenses.
Absolutely.
And, that's a strong message. I don't know if everybody understands what he really means by that, but you look at many of our neighboring communities who took advantage of policing and one-time law enforcement grants or with closed-ended law enforcement grants from the federal government. And then, of course, when those ended, the town was left with holding those salaries. And that's a great example of using a one-time revenue stream as opposed to a recurring revenue stream.
Exactly. Recurring revenue streams, you know, are your tax base, state aid, and a few other revenue sources. But you know, if you got a block grant, for instance, to train and then subsequently hire teachers or firemen or so on, you have to understand that goes away.
Use a John to stay on that one.
Exactly right.
John, last word. I cannot believe a half hour has already flown by.
I can't either. Why should people vote for John Gray for selectman? And I think I bring a different perspective. I'm bringing a perspective from really the advisory committee, which is the voice of the town. We ask all the tough questions that the taxpayer really wants asked. We go to the town, we go to town meeting, and we say, look, follow our lead. We've done all the research. And you know, it's rewarding when the town says, yes, we see your point, and they actually say, we'll follow what the advisory committee is or the direction they're trying to take us. If I'm on the Board of Selectmen, I don't think that's going to change much. And that you know, a selectman needs to ask, hey, where are we going with this? Not just, oh, that's a good idea, let's go. But it's is there value created for the taxpayer? Can the taxpayer come to me and say, what did I get for this? That's why the taxpayer ought to take a good look at my candidacy and say that I'd be a really good addition to the Board of Selectmen.
Powerful message. And if anybody wants to learn more about John Gray or the John Gray candidacy, go to www.johngrayselectman.org. johngrayselectman.org. Once again, folks, I'm Bob Hickey. I want to thank John for coming out with us today.
Thank you, Bob.
And taking the time to share his message with us. If you would like to see a replay of this, not only do you see it on these great cable stations, but you can go to our website, www.fcatv.org. As always, We want to thank John, as well as all candidates who are running for elected boards and committees in our town, for taking the time to share with us on Foxborough Central. However, it's not all about elections, it's also about you. If you or your organization would like to be featured on a future episode, check us out at fcatv.org or stop by our studios at 28 Central Street. We're here in downtown, beautiful downtown Foxborough, and we do have sewage. Or you can call us at 508-543-4757 and learn all about it. And a disclaimer, of course, the views expressed by the candidate do not necessarily reflect those of the host, the staff, board of directors, or organization of Foxborough Cable Access. Once again, I'd like to thank you for taking the time to learn about us, the candidate, and today's election issues. And be sure to come out and vote on Tuesday, April 30th at the Ahern School. Until then, and until next time, Foxborough, have a great day.